The maid picked up the wrong phone call and accidentally saved the entire company from collapsing. "What the hell did you just do?" Daniel Whitmore's voice slammed through the glass-walled room like a hammer. Zaria froze. The phone in her hand was still warm. 3 minutes earlier, it had been ringing non-stop. No one answered. The assistant was out. Daniel was downstairs working out. She was cleaning the conference table when the screen lit up. Stratacore Capital, Richard Hale. Fourth call. Zaria hesitated, then picked up. "Whitmore Residence, this is Zaria. I need Daniel, now. He's currently not—" Click. The call ended. The door burst open. Daniel stormed in, eyes blazing. His voice turned to steel. "You don't touch my phone! Who the hell do you think you are?" Zaria didn't move. Daniel's outburst still echoed like a cut across her skin. It wasn't the first time she'd heard that question. For 6 years, she'd lived in this mansion like a shadow, mopping floors, boiling tea, making beds. This luxury home, she knew every crack beneath its glossy paint. But no one knew her. Staff passed by without greeting. Vanessa called her the window girl. Daniel never said thank you. He simply gestured. She understood and stayed silent. She had no name here, just a function. She existed in this multi-million-dollar mansion like a machine, cleaning everything, except the disdain. Zaria had once been top of her class in Southside Chicago. Teachers called her the girl who loved messy math problems. She preferred charts and finance reports over phone games. She dreamed of studying economics, becoming a strategy consultant, sitting at the table, not cleaning it. Then her mother collapsed one icy morning. The doctor called it chronic kidney failure. Treatment costs were 5 times Zaria's tuition. She closed her laptop, tore up her acceptance letter. The day her mom was admitted was the same day she started working night shifts. A dream can fold as fast as a piece of paper. From that moment on, she had one goal, work enough to keep her mother alive. As for herself, she faded quietly. Zaria didn't drop out, she just learned elsewhere. Meeting tables had reports on top, shredded drafts underneath, and next to the trash were printouts covered in red ink. She gathered them each night once the office emptied out. One time, she found a SWOT analysis on a funding deal. Partner names, deadlines, weaknesses, all within 3 wrinkled pages. She didn't understand everything at first, but she kept researching, taking pencil notes in a small notebook. While wiping tables, she listened. While making coffee, she remembered. No one noticed she was learning, because no one looked. Zaria didn't learn from whiteboards. She learned from what people threw away. Not from lectures, but from waste. And she remembered every number. Zaria didn't just listen, she remembered. The name of every partner. The history of every negotiation. Who swayed easily, who avoided long questions. She knew Richard Hale liked simple numbers. Carter cared about the environment. Patel only asked about 3-year cash flow. During meetings, Zaria stood at a distance, but she watched every expression. At night, she wrote it all down, neatly, in order, with logic. A black notebook, no title, no signature, but it held the company's strategic map. No one taught her how. No one knew she was doing it. Zaria just understood. You don't need to be invited to the boardroom to understand how it works. Zaria didn't make coffee by the book. Richard took it strong, no sugar. Carter liked it weak with lemon. Patel wanted ice in a porcelain cup. No one told her this, she just remembered. When setting up the boardroom, she arranged files by flow, reports first, action plans next, minutes last. Vanessa once snapped, "Who told you to organize it like that?" Zaria said nothing, but Daniel didn't change a thing. She knew what mattered to whom, what to show first, what to leave last. She wasn't just wiping the table, she was setting their strategy, by hand. No one noticed, but if anyone asked, they'd realize. Everything was always in the right place. The $500 million deal with Stratacore was crumbling. Daniel paced his office. Sweat still clung from his workout, but his brow was drenched in worry. "I need a response by this afternoon." Richard Hale's last message. Cold. Final. Zaria heard it as she placed his coffee down. The advisors had been there since morning. One reprinted reports. Another rewrote slides. No one explained what was happening, but the air was tight, like everyone was sitting on a ticking bomb. Strategist was their biggest partner. If they pulled out, others would follow. Daniel knew that. The staff knew. Zarya knew too. Only one thing was unclear. Who would stay clear-headed enough to stop this collapse? Before the day was over? The ring cut through the silence. Zarya was wiping the boardroom table. Her hand froze. On screen, Strategist Capital, Richard Hale. First ring. No assistant in sight. Advisors were still in the side room. Daniel wasn't back. Second ring. Zarya looked around. No reaction. She knew the rule. Never touch the boss's phone. Third ring. She bit her lip. If this call went unanswered, who would take the fall? If she answered, would she lose her job? Fourth ring. The sound stretched like a held breath. Zarya set the cloth down. Her hand lifted. Slow, but certain. What happened next? There'd be no turning back. Zarya answered. "Whitmore residence, this is Zarya." A sharp voice cut in. "I need Daniel, right now. I'm sorry, he's not at his desk. I can—" Click. The call dropped. No thanks. No goodbye. Zarya hung up, heart pounding. She looked toward the door. Still silent. No one saw. No one knew. But she knew. She had crossed a line. Being polite wasn't enough. In this house, knowing your place was the unspoken rule. Zarya clenched her fist. She hadn't said anything wrong, but what she had just done might have been the biggest mistake in 6 years. The door flung open. Daniel stepped in, eyes bloodshot, shirt damp with sweat, breathing hard, but his voice ice cold. "What the hell did you just do?" Zarya stood upright. "Strategist called. Daniel cut her off. "You don't ever answer my phone. Ever." His voice rose, each word hitting the floor like a hammer. "You're not here to think. You're here to clean. Nothing more." Zarya clenched her hands. Didn't look up. "If you cross that line again, I'll make sure you never work anywhere else." He snatched the note off the table, crumpled it, and tossed it in the trash. "Get out of my sight." Zarya stepped back, said nothing. She walked out, biting her lip. One sentence, yet it slapped harder than a hand. It wasn't the first time, but this time something in her refused to bow. Zarya walked out of the room, slowly making her way down the long hallway. No one looked. No one asked. She paused by a glass window, leaned against the wall. Her hands were still slightly trembling, but her eyes no longer lowered. She didn't cry, didn't rage. She was just quiet. For 6 years, she had endured harsher words, but never had a sentence hit her chest quite like that. "You're not allowed to think." It wasn't just an insult. It erased her humanity. Zarya took a deep breath. For the first time, she realized the divide wasn't just about her role. It was about how they saw her. And for the first time, she wondered, if they don't allow her to think, maybe it's time she did the opposite. The first spark of resistance doesn't need words, just eyes. And her eyes had just changed. Zarya entered the lounge carrying a tray of glasses, eyes slightly lowered, like always. The conference room door was ajar. Voices spilled out. "We need to emphasize growth. Add 3 more ROI metrics at the end." Another chimed in. "We can boost ad spend next quarter if needed." Zarya set down the tray, slowly moved toward the bookshelf. She kept listening. The entire discussion, she had heard it all before. Same partner, same reactions. 2 years ago. No one asked, "Why is Strategist hesitating?" They talked, but they didn't listen. They didn't see what was right in front of them. Zarya saw it. Have you ever been in a room where everyone speaks, but no one truly hears? If you have, you'll understand Zarya's eyes now. Calm, but unmistakably clear. They're getting it wrong. That night, Zarya sat in the corner of her small room. She opened her worn, black notebook. A fresh page, neat handwriting, no crossouts. Richard Hale wants long-term commitment, not just numbers, hates vague talk. Carter focused on ESG. If sustainability isn't mentioned, she'll be the first to react. Patel, silent during meetings but makes the final call. Cares about profit distribution structure. She had heard enough, remembered enough. She wrote it all like a behavioral map. No Whitmore executive knew this much. Zarya didn't need a boardroom, she just needed data. and a deep enough lens to see what they all missed. Strategy isn't always in spreadsheets. Sometimes it's in the way someone asks a question, and she remembered every one. Zarya was organizing documents at the coffee counter. The conference room door was still open. Richard Hale's voice rang through the speaker, sharp and clear, with no effort to hide his disappointment. "We don't need 10 more PowerPoint slides. We need to see a 10-year vision." Silence followed. A few coughs, side glances. One advisor spoke quickly. "We'll revise the presentation." Hale paused, then hung up. Zarya stood still. Her eyes looked down, but her mind was clear. Whitmore's strategy was speaking the wrong language. They were pitching short-term solutions to a partner searching for long-term belief. She didn't need an MBA to understand that. Just the ability to hear. The sentence the entire room had ignored. The meeting was spiraling. Papers scattered across the table. Daniel pressed his forehead, voice tight. "We're out of time." One advisor suggested price adjustments. Another proposed added incentives. Zarya stood at the door, coffee tray in hand. No one noticed. She took a breath, set down the tray, stepped in. "Excuse me, I think I can help." The room froze. Daniel looked up. His eyes darkened. "What are you doing?" Zarya kept her tone calm. "I've heard the recent calls, and I think I understand what Mr. Hale is looking for." A few people scoffed. Vanessa folded her arms, smirked. Zarya didn't flinch. "I know I don't belong in this meeting, but if you'll allow me—" She lifted her head, eyes steady. "I'll say what no one else here has." The room fell silent, like all the air had been sucked out. Zarya stood in the center, her voice steady, clear. "I don't sit in the meetings, but I'm here, every day. I've heard Mr. Hale's real concerns. It's not about numbers, it's about trust." She looked Daniel straight in the eye. "They don't believe Whitmore is thinking long-term. They want a partner, not a pitch." One advisor frowned. "And how would you know that?" Zarya replied without hesitation. "I hear you every morning. I clean the office every night. I've seen slides that never mention sustainability, never touch on what they truly care about." Daniel leaned back in his chair, silent. Everyone else froze. Zarya's final words were soft but firm. "I didn't just listen today. I've been listening to you for 6 years." Zarya stepped forward. No one stopped her now. If they want long-term commitment, offer what no one else dares. Create a sustainable innovation fund, co-funded by Whitmore and Stratecore, shared investment, shared leadership, focused on clean tech, digital education, and community transformation. She glanced at the slide. Cut the expense tables, replace them with a 3-year impact roadmap. You don't need to talk about profit. They're smart enough to calculate it. What they want is a reason to believe you'll walk with them, not just this quarter, but the next decade. An advisor looked to Daniel. No objection. The room started to listen differently. Zarya scanned the table. "This isn't a pitch. It's a chance to prove you're worth trusting." No one spoke. Daniel was still, one hand on the table, eyes locked on the air in front of him. Then he picked up his phone. No questions, no approvals. He just dialed. "Richard, it's me. Just give me 2 minutes." The whole room held its breath. Zarya didn't move, didn't step back. Daniel spoke slowly, clearly. "We want to propose a joint fund, focused on sustainable innovation, co-funded, co-managed. Not to impress, but to endure." Silence. Daniel waited, closed his eyes for a second, then added, quieter this time, but honest, "We looked at it the wrong way, but we're listening now." 3 words echoed in Zarya's mind. "We're listening now." For the first time, they truly were. The speaker crackled. Richard Hale's voice returned. Low, measured, but no longer cold. "That's the first time I've heard you say what actually matters to us." A pause. "That fund, if you're serious, I'm willing to move forward." The room exploded. One advisor whispered, "Oh my God!" Another slammed the table in relief. Vanessa turned to Daniel, eyes wide. He gave a small nod, then looked at Zarya. The line was still open. Richard added, "I don't know who came up with that, but they get us." Daniel didn't respond. He just looked at Zarya, for the first time, not as someone who obeys. Zarya remained still, her hand tightening slightly. She didn't smile. She just closed her eyes for 1 second. like someone who had just set down a burden carried for 6 years. The meeting ended. Voices, applause, chairs scraping, then silence. Zarya still stood there. She didn't seek praise, didn't look for anyone's approval. Daniel walked toward her. No rush, no tension. When he reached her, he paused. Their eyes met, no longer cold, no longer superior. "You know," his voice softened, "I've been looking at you all wrong." Zarya didn't respond. She waited. Daniel gave a slight nod, like an apology without words. "You're in the wrong position. You're not just a maid." No one in the room spoke, but everyone heard it. Zarya's hand tightened, just a little, not from emotion, but because finally, someone truly saw her. The next morning, Zarya walked into the mansion like any other day. No one looked at her differently. No one said a word. Until Daniel called her into his office. A leather folder sat on his desk. He slid it toward her. "Read it." Zarya opened it. Inside was an official offer letter. Position: Senior Strategist, Partnerships and Analysis Division. Salary: 6 figures. Authority: lead her own team. Report directly to Daniel. She read each line, calmly. "You don't have to answer now," Daniel said, "but if you ever decide to start your own firm, I'll be your first investor." Zarya looked up, eyes not red, but deep. What would you do if the man who once barked, "Don't think," now placed your future in your hands? Would you say yes? Zarya closed the folder, lifted her head, her voice steady. "Thank you, but I won't be taking the position." Daniel frowned. "Why not?" Zarya took a soft breath. No hesitation. "Because I want to build something of my own. I don't just want to help one company do better, I want to help many think better from the start." She continued, slowly but firmly. "I want to create a consulting firm where people are heard, even if they're not seated at the big table." Daniel was quiet for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. "If you truly do it, I'll invest." No conditions, no control, just this once, he chose to trust. Not because she proved she was right, but because, for the first time, he saw she could choose what was right for herself. 6 months later. The glass facade at 83 Lexington Avenue gleamed under the morning light. On the door, a simple sign, Brooks & Co. Maid Consulting. Clean, bright, unapologetically direct. Inside, an open office space. No cubicles, no closed doors. Young staff, clear eyes, neat folders, laptops lit with data dashboards. Zarya walked past the desks in a crisp white shirt, her steps purposeful. She didn't carry a mop, didn't carry a tea tray, only a notebook. Same as always, but this time people paused as she passed, not out of curiosity, but because they knew she was the founder. The woman who once stood in corners was now setting the standard for an entire industry. In a cozy corner of Brooks & Company, 3 young women took notes rapidly. One had dropped out of school to raise her siblings. One had been told she was only fit to answer phones. One had nearly lost all confidence after 3 failed interviews. Zarya sat across from them. No theories, no PowerPoint slides. She shared stories of how to listen to the words others skip, how to read a face better than a financial report. Don't wait for someone to hand you a role. Step in, if you know you're right. 3 sets of eyes locked on hers. Zarya placed her hand on the table. "I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to never forget where you came from." Here, no one is ever too small to change the game, because she herself was once seen as less useful than a coffee machine. The hospital room was quiet. Sunlight slipped through the blinds. Zarya sat at the edge of the bed holding her mother's frail hand. "Mom, your daughter has her own company now." The older woman tilted her head. Her eyes were cloudy, but somehow shining. She didn't say much, just reached up and gently stroked Zarya's cheek. "You didn't give up," she whispered, like a memory breathed aloud. Zarya nodded. This time, she didn't hide her tears. The sleepless nights, the days scrubbing floors until her arms ached, the moments she nearly gave up, but remembered. Her mother gave up everything so she could go to school. Today, Zarya couldn't repay it all, but she had done one thing. She gave her mother something she hadn't seen in years, a look with no fear, only pride. At Brooks & Copey's first international partnership signing, Zarya sat at the head of the table. Across from her, a senior executive leaned forward, squinting at the file. "Honestly, I still don't get it. Where did you get your MBA?" The room turned, waiting for her answer. Zarya didn't rush. She smiled softly. "I studied in a billionaire's kitchen." A beat. Then chuckles. Surprised, not mocking. "That's where I learned to read people when they didn't know I was watching. To hear the things that never made it into the reports." She closed the file. "And most importantly, I learned how to walk into a room where no one thought I had the right to speak." One sentence, but behind it was a lifetime. One sentence, so raw it could go viral, because it was true to the bone. One quiet weekend afternoon, Zarya stopped outside the old mansion. The iron gate was still painted black. The trees lining the driveway stood taller now. No one came to greet her. None needed to. She stood still on the sidewalk, hands in her coat pockets, looking at the door she used to enter each day, like a shadow. The steps she once scrubbed with numb fingers, the windows where secret meetings played out, and she only ever heard half. Everything looked the same, but she wasn't. Zarya didn't go in. She just looked, then nodded, as if saying goodbye to an older version of herself, then turned away, without regret, because she knew that place was her beginning, not her return. Have you ever been underestimated? Just because of who you are? Because you wore simpler clothes? Spoke more softly? Sat in the corner no one noticed? Zarya stood in that corner once, in a house where they only remembered her when the floor was dirty. No one asked what she thought, no one asked what she dreamed, but she listened, she remembered, and she waited, for the right moment to speak. Maybe you're in that place now, where people look past you like furniture. But don't forget, big dreams often begin in silence. Have you ever stood up, just once, to show them, "I deserve to be heard"? If so, drop your story in the comments. Maybe today. It's your turn to walk into the room. There's a community with no nameplates. They nod when they're wronged, even when they know they're right. They're better at listening than speaking. They have full strategies in their heads, but only get noticed when the coffee goes cold. Zarya was once one of them, not because she was less than anyone, but because the world wasn't used to seeing someone like her in the middle of the meeting. If you've ever been judged by your job, your zip code, your accent, then remember this: don't let where you come from define your worth. True value isn't where you start. It's how you refuse to let others write your ending. And sometimes all it takes is one person to rise, for a whole community to follow. Zarya wasn't the only one ever overlooked. She's just the voice for millions. People who've been brilliant in silence, dismissed for their position, their color, or their past. But she chose not to stay silent. She stepped forward at the right time, and the world had to look again. If you've ever been Zarya, if you've ever sat quietly in a room that should have heard you, comment, "Me too." Let others know they're not alone. Let yourself know you never were. And if you believe everyone deserves a shot to shine, no matter where they begin, like this video, share it to give courage to someone still waiting to be seen, and subscribe if you want to hear more stories that remind you of your own strength, because who knows, the next story might be yours.